jargon term is N-E-T. Yes, net. We know what a net is, right? We've all played volleyball or badminton or basketball. We know what a net is. What does this have to do with autism? Is it a safety net? Can we fall into it? Not quite. Okay, so what is N-E-T? And we don't shorten it to net. When people talk about N-E-T, they talk about N-E-T. What the hey nunny nunny are they talking about? Actual definition, N-E-T. N-E-T stands for Natural Environment Training. It's training and generalization of skills within the child's natural environment. And I put child there, but it's really within anybody's natural environment. So on Tuesday, our jargon term was DTT, that discrete trial teaching. Usually when somebody's talking to you about ABA and you see a video, more often than not, you will see a video that's DTT. And over the years, many people have gotten confused and thought that DTT was ABA. But the truth of the matter is that a good, balanced, effective, high-quality ABA program is going to use DTT, NET, and a lot of other things as well. So, but, you know, people don't do the videotape of NET because, you know why? It doesn't translate really well. It looks like the individual that you're teaching is just hanging out in their natural environment, so it's hard to distinguish what's being taught. Let's take a look at our working definition here of NET. Working definition is using a child's world as their classroom. I always remember there was a little video that used to play on PBS when my son was little and watching things like Caillou, and it showed a mom or an aunt, I guess, you know, she could have just been a relative, standing in line at an ATM with a little girl, and they were waiting, and there were 3 people ahead of them in line, about 3 people, I'm guessing. This is my memory of this commercial, right? But they were standing there, and the mom or the aunt or whoever she was had dollar bills in her hand that she was about to put into the ATM, I guess. And she started talking to the little girl, and I don't really remember what the lesson was, but I think first it was like a lesson about, you know, what shape is this? And the little girl saying, oh, you know, it's a rectangle. The shape of a dollar is a rectangle. And then the aunt or the mom or whoever she was did something creative with the dollar, like folded it up, and then it was a square, and then folded it to a heart or whatever. And then the tag on the commercial was that every single moment is an opportunity to learn. And I remembered that so distinctly because we were at a point where that was what was being told to me by our ABA team, that never let a minute go by. Take what's happening and make the entire environment, we talk about an enriched environment, make the entire world his classroom. And, you know, there are arguments about NET and how contrived you can be before it isn't NET anymore. As a former teacher, I just really am not interested in that. Let's teach our kids and let's use the world around them and use it in the most creative ways that we can, because I think that's what helps us to get to creative kids. So I remember at that time we were starting to work on colors, and we would pick a color a week and have that be the thing that we were focusing on. It was our target for the week, and the whole world became his classroom. So I would be driving him across town to go for a half-hour speech session, right? I would have to drive a half an hour to get to the half-hour thing and a half an hour back. And it was the only part of the day that he and I had where I wasn't feeding him, where he wasn't with a therapist at that point. You know, it was a half an hour in the car. It totaled an hour. And I started to use that time to focus on colors. So we would play all kinds of games about which colors can you see. So if the color of the week was yellow, it was how many yellow things can you find. So not only were we working on yellow at that point, we were counting. And as he identified things that were yellow, we talked about the fact that yellow started with a Y. Later on, we talked about the fact that it had 2 L's in it and that it ended in a W when we were working on those letters. So we just enriched the environment around him. Eventually, we took every single lesson that he had, and we found that we could work on a lot of it in the car, or we could work on it in line at the grocery store. It's those moments that you think, I think a lot of times when people get involved in really good ABA programs and so much of your time is taken up with that the minute you get some downtime, it's like, and believe me, I get it. But every single moment is the opportunity to learn. And what you find is that when you participate in those moments and make it a game, it's really fun. The child is not like, oh, more therapy. And it fills the time. You know what they say about busy hands? Busy hands are hands that are not in trouble, right? So for our kids, if we're engaged with them and we've got them involved and we're playing something with them, then they don't have an opportunity to get bored or sensory overload and get ramped for a tantrum. I knew this for sure when I was an aunt and my sister's 3 kids, when I would go and do things with them, I was really good at it. When I had a child with autism, I didn't know how to get there. My therapy team helped me to get there so that we did eventually arrive in a place where it took some DTT, I must tell you, before we could get to the NET in a really good quality, consistent way. But eventually we got to the point where every single moment had the potential to be a classroom and to learn. If all you ever did was DTT and you never did NET, I can tell you, you won't get where you want to go. But if all you ever do is NET, my experience as a teacher and as a mom of a child with autism who had difficult learning was that I gave up because I couldn't get enough of a skill on board to get it to the NET. So the DTT sets you up and begins to teach the skill. The NET is what makes it natural so that it becomes the child's skill. But a lot of times our kids can't get to that moment in the natural environment without having taken it outside the environment, worked on it to give them the skill, rewarded them for it, and then plug it into the natural environment. So for me, quality ABA starts with DTT. There's a heavy NET component. And then, of course, there's fluency training. There are many other things that a good quality ABA therapist, teaching techniques to get them to where they need to be. But I would never want to do it without an element of DTT and without a heavy element of NET.